Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jonno White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jonno White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up, to do just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is a good friend of mine, Mattiske, who lives in the same state, just up the road a little bit from me, an hour and a half up the road from me in Brisbane, up on the beautiful Sunshine Coast. Greg is the college principal of a wonderful school called Suncoast Christian College. Welcome to the podcast, Greg.
Thank you very much. Great to be a guest.
Yes, well, I have to say, first of all, you lead and live in one of the best places in the world. I always joke that my podcast, I'm still trying to get Tourism Queensland on board as a sponsor, and I
Yes,
think one of the best ways to do that is chat with people like you who are based on the sunny coast, Sunshine Coast. So any
it's a
international
it
listeners,
is yes,
um,
it is a
oh,
little hard to beat, isn't it?
oh, it's amazing. It's such a beautiful part of the world. So, for those, I said to you before we started recording, and Greg and I know each other really well, and I also work with Greg and with his team and with the school, which I love and have loved getting to know the school. But can you tell our listeners about a little bit about Suncoast, the school you lead, and what you do as a college principal?
Yeah, sure. Um, Well, Suncoast has been around for around 40 years, so it is on a in a growth corridor just about an hour north of Brisbane. So it's a sort of semi-rural slash urban sort of area. A very high growth rate just because of its proximity to beautiful beaches and its a very enjoyable winter climate. Winter you can still run around in shirt sleeves, pretty warm over summer, but so it's a pretty spectacular part of the world. It's a P to 12 Christian school, so we have students from the preparatory year, right through to their graduation before other pathways. We have about 100 students in a little learners program, which is preschool. And all up, we have about 1,000 students on campus every day, and a staff of probably around 150 to operate the ship. So I've had a long career at the school. I've been here for 25 years myself, probably unexpectedly, came as head of English initially and really loved that, very passionate about literature and English. Then I was head of middle years. I really love the middle years feel very passionate that school be exciting and engaging and meaningful for students in those sometimes referred to as those lost years. Then it was my privilege to look after curriculum in the school for a number of years before becoming deputy principal, and then had the wonderful opportunity to lead the school now. So I really have responsibility mostly for leading the staff team. So I have great support from the team around me to operate the school, very specific delegated responsibilities. But it's my job to lead and direct and manage the executive team and the staff generally. So yeah, it's a great team. I don't love everything about my job, but I do love my job. I love coming to work, and yeah, it's terrific when you have a team that is just all on the same page and unified, and just people of great character.
Mm.
It's wonderful. There is a real joy in serving together like that. So yeah, of course has the usual stresses like other places, but yeah, it's a wonderful team culture at Suncoast.
Yeah,
Does
it
that kind
is.
of explain enough about what
It
about the
does.
context here?
That was great, actually, because I always try to explain to people how unique the school principal or head of school, as it's called in other places, role is. It's such a unique role, and I think that was great as well, because I often forget. I even forget, working with you, that you've been there for 25 years, and that gives you such. Um, that's actually quite a unique pathway that you've taken. So that was
Yeah,
great
it
to get
is.
that insight as well. Let's go back to the start, though. I know
Sure.
listeners really love hearing people's stories. So, starting with when you were growing up, little Greg, when Greg was just
Yep. Okay.
a little guy. What were some of the moments from that season of your life, from growing up, or even themes that really shaped you into the person you are today?
Yeah, so look, there's probably many things, but I'm a farm boy, so grew up in country South Australia, so quite a long way from here in the southernmost corner of South Australia. So cold, wet winters, very hot, dry summers. But I grew up in a very stable family. I have just one sister, so quite a nuclear family. But I think the farm life certainly instilled a very deep love of the outdoors and of the tranquility to be found, and the peace that's found outdoors. So I probably still are drawn to in my recreation and my sort of soul times. I want to be outdoors in the bush. I grew up in a Christian family, and that's been probably the most foundational baseline in my life. It's always had a faith and always been aware of God's love for me and of His strength that I can draw on. And I've obviously, fast forward all through the years, and find myself leading a Christian school community. That all has its roots very clearly in my upbringing. Yeah, I think I was unsure that I wanted to be a farmer, and then later really sure that I didn't want to be a farmer. I think just didn't have it in me, and perhaps my dad encouraged me to perhaps pursue another pathway because he didn't have that option. He was from that generation where you did what your father did, and he had to leave school early, and he sort of felt he didn't have those choices. And he loved learning. He didn't do any formal training, but he had a massive library, and he was always reading. And I think I just got certainly acquired a love of learning and a love of inquiry, and a developing mind, perhaps from him, and it certainly felt very secure to pursue an option outside of the farm. I was the first person in my family to go to university on sort of all sides, and so I didn't really understand all the options there, and I just I don't know, it just sort of seemed natural. I loved English, so I just decided to pick English teaching, and and then thankfully found that I really loved it, was quite good at it, had a lot to learn, of course, but I just it was perhaps sometimes choices are not always deliberate or fully thought through, especially when you're young. But I'm very grateful for the pathway that I ended up on. And I certainly would say that God had a plan there, and certainly I can see His hand at many points in my life directing me, and I'm very grateful for the experiences I've had, and very very grateful for the opportunities I have right now to be part of this community. Is that
Yeah, that's incredible. It's great to get to know a little bit more about your background, being a farm boy and the like.
yes?
I'm interested to know about your dad. You mentioned that I guess his the love of learning that really came from him. Are there any moments that really stick out to you around your dad and around learning or really life that you think back to and you remember the way he dealt with a situation, or that's been really foundational in how you approach leadership, life, and learning?
Look, I can't think of anything particular. I have images, memories in my mind of him in his study, with his books, and he was, we'd had quite an interesting church history as well. We'd been in a very conservative sort of church environment initially, and then I guess my parents had been through quite a spiritual awakening, and they had led them to move into a sort of different church experience where Dad had sort of become one of the leaders. And I just remember him always taking a very principled and disciplined approach to matters of life and relationships and faith. When you become sort of more personally involved in a community like a church, you become very involved with people's lives and you journey with them, and it was that principled approach to those things and that commitment to people, which was such an example to me. And thankfully, after I had left home and gone to university at 17, it was a 4-hour drive away to the big smoke. Thankfully, there also found mentors and father-like figures who continue to call out the same kind of identities in me. That sort of care for people, passion to see people flourish and prosper in their lives and relationships. And I think that all fed beautifully into a teaching career as well, and has certainly probably quite foundational to my approach with just how I feel about staff and people in general. So look, a very very influential example from my dad. Right back from the beginning.
Yeah, so Greg, I'm interested to find out when, as you look back at growing up, but also then the years after that, and even maybe your first years, at Suncoast, what were some of the leadership opportunities, the first leadership opportunities you had? Do you remember having a chance to lead a bunch of people,
Yeah.
or to own a project? What comes to mind?
Yeah, so I think probably my first time out of home, when I went to the big smoke, as I said, to university and getting involved in some churches and some youth leadership and things like that. There were people there. I had a lot of self doubt as a young man, of course, and certainly, well, I had a really good childhood. Still suffered from the same kinds of insecurities that many young people do and many adults do, of course, of just deep self doubt and not really sure if I was good enough and all those kind of things. But finding being very responsive to mentors and people who are older and wiser and would um, give or ask you, offer opportunities for you to sort of step up. And I know I always found myself saying yes to those things. And I think that's been very, very influential and very important in my life journey is, generally say yes to those kind of opportunities, even though you're terrified perhaps, or really not sure you're qualified at all, or not sure if you have anything to offer. But, that's where tremendous development has come in my life. And so I think there was, a period during university where I did a lot of, volunteer work with youth and things like that, and I was quite a good organizer and discovered some skills and things there, and I think that then that carried over, that confidence sort of builds. And then when I started teaching in Tasmania, a little state to the south of a little island state, it was very, very, very green, very, quite naive, but very willing, and so when there are opportunities I'd never taught computer studies, for example. Opportunities came and said, "Oh, would you consider? You're young, you must know about computers." I was actually the last group at school that missed any kind of computer education at all. But I went out and bought an XT computer, as it was back then, and had a 20 meg hard drive, MS DOS, taught myself DOS from a textbook, and taught it. And then, years later, I'm rolling out a laptop program in a school, and that no formal training, but you think, oh, what a wonderful trajectory that was. And it just simply came from being tapped on the shoulder and saying, "Yeah, I'll give that a go. I'll give that a go." And that's happened many, many times. I went from Tassie and then went to a burgeoning school on the Gold Coast, another high growth population area on to the south of us here, south of Brisbane, and it was a school that had grown from 60 to 1,000 in 5 years. And I walked in the door there and immediately offered opportunity to be a head of house, and that all the pastoral care and lots of the sort of fundamental organisation of the school was organised that way. And I just probably didn't even have an opportunity to say no. I just said yes, but it was a tremendous hot housing experience, you might say. So many other great people to learn from, so many wonderful opportunities to develop, and that was fantastic. And then that then led to sort of the next career thing, and then when I took the job initially here as head of department, I didn't feel ready at all. In fact, I had applied for the job a bit reluctantly, but then just really felt this strong sense that I should say yes and I should do it. And it was bewildering at first and a bit nerve wracking, but got going. And again, there's so many people along any of life's journeys to help and support and to help you on your way. And I've always found that. There's always been there can be some very challenging contexts at times, but there are always beautiful, amazing people around that you can look to and lean on and draw strength from and tap into their wisdom. So I think I've been at probably at all of those schools, there have been people that I had perhaps self-identified as mentors, and then many of those, some of those would not have been aware that they were mentoring me, but I was bleeding them dry, taking learning, soaking it up like a sponge. And then some of them, of course, were very deliberate and very generous in their very they I guess perhaps from their own convictions, they saw it as a personal mission to help a young fella out on his journey and kindly and wisely offer some suggestions and things at times. And I was very open to that.
Who were some of those mentors that really stand out for you? I know there'd be a lot, so you could mention them all, but who are a couple of those people that you think had some of the most significant influence on your leadership?
Yeah, look, certainly at Suncoast, a main one here was a fellow called Terry Hornby. He was the deputy principal here for a long time, sort of head of secondary. He's now a principal at another school on the coast, but he was just so generous and wise and calm. I'm I'm a bit of a high energy person at times, and a bit flitty and a bit flighty, and perhaps a a more highly developed sense of self-responsibility than is sometimes warranted. Um, and he would quite regularly, very beautifully hose me down, and just help
Mm,
me be that more balanced, measured kind of
mm,
person, and that reminding me that I didn't need to be the Messiah.
mm,
I wasn't responsible for everything, and there was a team here, and there's also time. School, school context.
mm,
Sometimes people get very stressy about a single period of time or something's not going well, and Terry would always remind me that we're here for the long haul, and it's 13 years the
mm,
school journey, and together across the team, our individual strengths, but our weaknesses, we all contribute and it will balance out. And yeah, there were so many lessons that he taught me, and I was very fortunate to work very closely with him as I became head of
mm,
middle years. And just there were so many wonderful strengths he had that were and ways that he did things that were really geared to giving him great longevity in the role. He,
yeah.
he he was the person who never became jaded, never became cynical, always believed in people, and he was very consistent. So staff and me included, you always knew
Mm,
that Terry was going to be the same yesterday and today, and you weren't going to be
yeah.
unsure who you're going to find. Always
Hmm.
approachable. Yeah, just about and such a good listener. He would always listen at the
Yeah.
start. So yeah, I learned probably from my career. I learned
Mm.
just such a depth of wisdom from him.
Yeah, that's incredible. Are there any moments that spring to mind of specific stories or moments of Terry and that have really stayed with you of how he dealt with something that went better than expected and how he celebrated that or how he handled a crisis or a really difficult situation?
Look, look, look,
Any stories?
a couple of them. I mean, back in the day, I remember at the end of the year, I was, head of middle years, so 7, 8, 9. Been a pretty busy year. A lot of events at the end of the year, and I was still teaching, and I had a class, and I had a whole pile of marking. To try to keep the kids busy to the end of the year with worthwhile and meaningful learning. And we'd finish the year, and I started all this marking to do, and Terry found me in my office still marking the work. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I've got to finish this work." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, the kids have done it, and it's important to honour their commitment." And he said, "But who's going to see it?" I said, "Oh, well, I'm not really sure." And he goes, "Well, stop it." I said, "No, I can't. I have to finish it." And he picked up the pile and threw it in the bin. And I was absolutely horrified. um, but it really made
That's
me
so
think.
good.
It really made me think, and it really was quite life changing because I'd had this quite ridiculous obsession with my own self-imposed perfectionism, perhaps, and my own
Yeah.
perhaps quite ridiculous expectations at times. And it was one of those moments where that triggered then a whole bunch of reflection about a whole lot of things, and really, I guess Terry was always focused on, well, what really matters. And it's very easy, not just in a school, but certainly in a school, very easy to become focused on the mechanics of the job, because there are a lot of mechanics. The mechanics of teaching, the mechanics of a timetable, of running a school, and the operations can sometimes smother the mission. And that example from Terry just really helped me to just really reframe that whole thinking in my brain. And another one was whenever there were difficult things with staff, and of course there are lots of those, and with parents too. Anywhere there's people, right? But Terry was always so measured with his dealings with those things. As a younger man, I really would be very anxious around anything to do with conflict, and I had to make that such an area of growth I didn't
Mm.
ever think I could be an administrator or a principal. I just thought, no, I would never be up for all that conflict and all that. It would make me. I remember in some of my early career, going to meetings where there was high conflict, and just I was actually quaking. My stomach was shaking, and I couldn't stop
Mm-hmm.
it. And but Terry taught me to be up for those conversations and how to be up for them, and not have that
Mm.
sense of I just want to get out of the room. I don't want to go. I don't want to go to this meeting. But to approach those things with gentleness and calm, and
Mm.
kindness, and that's been an approach that's been really helpful in this role that I'm in now. Is just to remember that if I go in gently and kindly and with a listening ear, that we can get through this no matter how challenging or difficult it is. And yeah, I think just Terry's calm manner in those
Mm.
things is just such a powerful example. Yeah, and helped me reshape the way I thought about those circumstances and situations, and to navigate them in a much healthier way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think you. I think. Uh, I reckon we underestimate how much of a difference it makes if we can walk sort of with that gentleness, kindness, and and just stay calm. And because you can be calm and still deliver difficult feedback, you can stay calm and
Right.
deliver difficult news, or
Yes.
have a difficult conversation and stay calm. And I think for me, I remember when I just think growing up and just the way you can feel triggered by certain things. I just always
Yes.
assumed when a difficult conversation happened, it had to be tense, and
Yes.
you had to not only
And
feel
perhaps,
tense but
yeah, and perhaps,
communicate tensely.
yeah, yes, and sometimes be the tough guy. So that
Yes, yeah,
it's important to hold the line here and to be firm. I struggled with that a lot in my early career, because a lot of my mentors who are wonderful principals, but they were perhaps more along the choleric personality type of line.
mm,
Perhaps people who were more up for that sort of thing. And I'd initially, try to model um, my
mm-hmm.
dealings with these things in that more aggressive, just puff your chest out, step out, and put people in their place and say, "Hey, it's not okay," and generally, or probably not generally, perhaps always, that went very pear shaped, and it just, I really, yeah, I had to find a different way. And I also got very burnt out in the head of middle years didn't end well for me. I was in my 30s, I think, and I learnt a very valuable lesson at the end of that, because I'd gone about it all the wrong way. I'd by the end of that 7 years, I've exhausted all my personal reserves, and I was very worn
Mm,
down, quite cynical. Didn't wanted to avoid those kinds of situations, and it wasn't. I was very grateful that a fresh opportunity came up, but thankfully was
mm,
able to revisit that thinking later on, and otherwise I couldn't have done this job that I'm in now.
yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioned one aha moment, which is that fantastic story with Terry throwing your
Yeah,
marking in the bin, which I just love. That's such a good story. I feel like that's sometimes what a perfectionist needs, is literally
yes,
someone to come along,
we all
pick
need,
things
we
up,
all need a
throw them in the
we all
bin.
need a Terry. Yeah,
How am I going to mark that now? It's in the bin. Well, there
yes,
you go. Now we're ready to move on.
that's right.
Um, are there any other aha moments that spring to mind for you as a leader in the past? Really throughout your whole career and the different leadership roles you've had.
Yeah, look,
Aha
yes, look,
moments where
yeah.
where just something that sticks in your mind.
Yeah, look, and they haven't all come from really people I've deeply admired and respected, like Terry. Some of the ones have come through working with really people that I would find really challenging to work with. And I think some of the most powerful moments where I've actually been stopped in my tracks and had to have a look at myself in the mirror and actually accept criticism or a critique from someone who sees the world completely differently to me. And on a couple of occasions, I've thought, wow, that person's absolutely spot on. So I think early in my career, because I'm a bit of a, have been known to be a conflict avoider, I do that terrible thing which so many of us have done, which is, you revert to, um, email, for example, as a way of addressing difficult things. And I have such a strong rule now. I will not address anything um, con-
Mm.
that's not that's in a personal relationship with a staff member or a parent. Will not try and sort that out over email. And I remember in the days where I'd get very hot and bothered about something, get very upset, and then go home and stew on it, and then compose the heated email, and I'd sent one of those to a colleague, and he quite rightly he rang me, or I might have got the guilt a few hours later and rung him, and he just said, don't do that. Don't send those emails. Just don't. Just stop it. And and he didn't mean it unkindly, but it was actually the kind of it was exactly what I needed to hear. And I thought, he's right. I've been a complete idiot here, and every time I do this, I regret it. Why do I keep doing it? Because I learned it was the beginning of I'm so glad for that. I didn't like it at the time, but I'm so glad for it because I had been in the habit of you get upset, you start to build narratives in your head or to explain what's going on from your point of view, and invariably you end up creating perceptions of things which are just not based on reality. They're just based on your thoughts, and then if you act on those,
Mm.
it's pretty bad. Yeah, so there've been a few of those where I've learned some hard lessons, and I'm really glad for them, but I did not enjoy it at the time. Bit of the old humble pie, it's just like, oh, I need to maybe it's me. Yes, it's me. It is me. I need to stop.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
need to stop that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable thought whenever that happens. But I think, and then I feel like one of my favorite quotes. I can't remember where I heard it, but about that idea of writing those sort of emails. It's also about making those sort of speeches when you're really angry, like when
Yes.
you're really angry at someone. You think that's it. I'm going to really tell them how I feel about this now. And the quote is something like if you tell give someone the speech when you're really angry, and it'll be the best speech you'll ever regret.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Hundred
because at the
percent.
time, at the
Hundred
time you
percent.
feel like it's so on point. You're like, oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sure about this, and then but
Yes.
you inevitably always regret that email or speaking out of that
That's right.
anger rather than actually
Yeah.
learning to
It's true,
be
and
calm.
and of course, the more responsibility you have, or the more staff that you supervise, the more consequential those errors become. And I'm glad I still muck that up every now and again. Make mistakes, but I'm glad I learnt some of those really important lessons, which have become principles that I really aspire not to violate, because I want to be that leader who's consistent and who's approachable and
Mm,
who is principled, and some of those behaviours and those ways of thinking are just really detrimental, really destructive,
hmm.
to the relationship that a leader needs to have for a really healthy organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well, let me wrap up today, Greg. It's been great hearing some of your story and talking about some of your mentors and the like. Let's do Leadership Express. I've got a handful of
Okay.
questions for you. The first one is, what's a book that you've gifted to other people?
Look, probably pretty boring and ordinary, but because I'm relatively new to being a principal, um, John Maxwell's Leadership Gold. Uh, when I started in this job,
Mm,
I gave that to our executive team, and then we just spent 18 months just going through it chapter by chapter,
mm-hmm,
and it was like a book study. And
mm,
we what was so good is I think as a team we'd been so focused on the operations of the school, and this
yeah.
really did help to bring a lot of clarity to us about, yeah, we've got to do that. We've got to manage things. We have to operate the school, but we have to lead it, and that's something
Mm.
quite different. And being a leader is about being very principled, and having a very principled, disciplined approach to leadership. And so that book really helped.
Yeah, amazing. What about a recent leadership lesson you've learned for the first time or been reminded of?
Oh, I think just constantly, as the the more I get into my role here, I'm in my sixth year of being a principal. I think initially ignorance was bliss, but just as you track along, the weight of because of the weight is heavy because the awareness of what you're responsible for, and of just how important different aspects of the role are, and so maintaining that. Um, I guess that sense of well-being, and first love of the job. Remembering why I did this, and not becoming overburdened with all the serious stuff that's out there, and at times some of that's not very easy to deal with, but again, learning that it's part of the job, and when those very difficult challenges come, to accept and embrace them, and continue to walk through them with a team. Not doing it on your own, but walk through it with a team, not retreating to sort of unhealthy habits, like just sort of isolating yourself, or just becoming obsessed on that, but making sure that you keep an eye on there will be other good parts of the role, but also good parts of the organisation, to sort of keep that balance, because it's there's you've got to those things can take quite some time to resolve, and I can really see how leaders and people dealing with that kind of really challenging stuff can get worn down pretty rapidly, and then find it hard to come back from. So, and some days it really is get out of bed and get dressed for work, and come to work knowing that it's going to be okay, and that and you're getting out of coming to work because of the beautiful people that you're going to help and support on that day, and just sort of keeping that balanced perspective and a healthy perspective and approach. Through whatever particular season of leadership that you're in at the time.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Do you have any favorite quotes that you? It doesn't have to be leadership; could just be about life. Just quotes that have really stuck with you, or things that you tend to tell others.
A really good one from I work very closely with the lead pastor from the church that's connected to the school. He's a very impressive younger man, a bit younger than me, but he has so many sort of principles that guide him. And one of his, which I've really taken on board here, is to always choose trust over suspicion. And that's we do that with all our relationships, whether it's with a student that you're dealing with, who's not got their homework in on time, or is late with an assignment, or a parent with a concern that sort of gets up your nose a bit, or some issue with staff, but to choose trust over suspicion. And it's extraordinary how that simple thing in your head allows that trust relationship to be unharmed by perhaps difficult conversations that you've got to have, and it really it's much healthier for you to choose to trust people, rather than to sort of go down rabbit warrens of being suspicious about motive, or suspicious about a particular reason someone's doing something. It's a mental discipline where you just refuse to allow your brain to go to the suspicious conspiracy side of things. And you've got to catch yourself. But choosing trust over suspicion has been a very very, very important little mantra we have here.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's really, really good and very powerful. This is a bit of a lighter question. It could be, you might think of something that is serious, or it might be something really lighthearted. A movie or TV show that influenced you.
Oh, all right. I have loved the Big Bang Theory. It's so cleverly written. But what I really admire, and have actually felt like it was, I felt like it was PD, like professional development, was watching Sheldon's friends do life with him, and not lose their minds, and want to just shut down that relationship, because he's so annoying, he's so obnoxious at times, he's so arrogant, and yet his friends just see him as a friend, and they accept his quirks and things as just being things they don't have to change or fix. And so bizarrely, while I'm laughing at all the nonsense that goes on there, Yeah, I've actually really been challenged by the way that they relate to
Mm,
you know, people who are perhaps outside the normative range of the way people interact with each other. Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I love
uh,
that.
so,
I haven't had that recommendation yet, but I enjoy. Um, yeah, I had never really thought about Big Bang Theory from that perspective. So that's gold. I love that. That's a good one to add to the list of recommendations. Okay, last question. If you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you
ooh.
say?
um, I think, all right, just one. I think to remember that you never should try to do this sort of stuff on your own. And if you find yourself out there, blazing a path on your own, or doing something because you believe in it and you haven't got anybody with you, you're in trouble. And so, learning, when you're a very capable person and you've got lots of passion and ideas for things, you need to set yourself aside and learn the important humility of including other people in your decision making, in your action plans, in the steps that you take, because it
Mm,
ultimately, over the long haul, things are so much more powerful and effective when we do it together, and
mm-hmm.
when we're accountable, as the leader, to the teams that we are leading, and who are there to help achieve the goals of the organisation or achieve the vision that we've set. Um, yeah, I've been a fairly independent person at times, and I can certainly
Mm,
run ahead, but I've learned more and more that it's so important to do everything together with people, even though that's perhaps sometimes less efficient. Uh, it's the long way around rather than the shortcut, but it's so much more
mm,
powerful and so much more effective and meaningful when
yeah.
you submit to others and work as part of, or submit to a team and do things together.
Yeah, well said. That's great advice, Greg. For those who've really enjoyed hearing your perspectives today and your thoughts, where can people find you on LinkedIn or Twitter, and also find out about Suncoast?
I am on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. And yeah, otherwise, just you can email me at the college as principal@suncoastcc.qld.edu.au. But yeah, certainly, probably LinkedIn's probably the easiest place to find me.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. I know that you will have gotten a lot out of chatting with Greg today. I mean, there's been so many things I've loved about the conversation, but the image of Terry throwing Greg's
Yeah.
marking in the bin is one that stands out for me. I think there's all of us who have perfectionistic tendencies can appreciate that as just. I just love that. That's one of my favorite stories I've heard in a while. So don't forget, listeners, we also have the Jonno White Leadership Podcast and the Leadership Question of the Day podcast that you can tune into and to grow as a leader. But I want to finish today by saying thank you to Greg for being so generous and so vulnerable to share, some of your story, and also for the laughs as well. But it's just been heaps of fun getting to know your story a bit better for me, and I know for our listeners too. So thanks for coming on the podcast,
Oh,
Greg.
thank you very much, Jane, for having me. It's been great.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 questions on leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, Jonno White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.